Namaste and welcome back to Typical Monk. Today, we find out how a green leaf makes its own food, the pigments that catch the sunlight, the light reaction that stores its energy, and the Calvin cycles that builds sugar out of thin air. And we will drill it the neat way too, one idea at a time. Here is today's path. 5 stops. First, the photosynthetic pigments. Second, inside the chloroplast and the 2 reactions. Third, the light reaction, which makes ATP, NADPH and oxygen. Fourth, the Calvin cycle, the C pathway. And fifth, C4 plants, photorespiration, and the limiting factors. First, the pigments that actually catch the light. A leaf has 4 pigments: chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, the xanthophylls, and the carotenoids. Chlorophyll A is the chief pigment and the reaction center. The others are called accessory pigments. The accessory pigments widen the range of light absorbed, hand that energy over to chlorophyll A, and they also protect it from damage by light. And chlorophyll A absorbs more strongly in the blue and the red parts of the spectrum. That is where photosynthesis peaks. Now, where does all of this happen? Photosynthesis takes place in the chloroplast, mostly in the mesophyll cells of the leaf. The thylakoid membranes, stacked up into grana, carry the pigments, and this is where the light reaction happens. The stroma, the fluid around the grana, is where the dark reaction, the fixing of carbon, takes place. So the 2 stages are separated in space, the light-dependent part on the membrane and the sugar-building part in the stroma. Now stage 1, the light reaction. Light strikes the pigments in the thylakoid and energizes 2 systems: photosystem 2, called P680, and photosystem 1, called P700. Water is split. This is photolysis, right next to photosystem 2, releasing electrons, protons, and the very oxygen we breathe. The electrons then flow along the Z scheme, driving photophosphorylation to make ATP and reducing power in the form of NADPH. So the light reaction hands 2 products, ATP and NADPH, over to the next stage. And remember, this oxygen comes from water, not from carbon dioxide. Now stage 2, the dark reaction, or the Calvin cycle. In the stroma, the ATP and NADPH power the fixing of carbon dioxide into sugar, and this reaction does not need light directly. Carbon dioxide is accepted by Rub, a 5-carbon sugar, using the enzyme Rubisco, the most abundant enzyme on Earth. The first stable product is a 3-carbon acid called PGA, and that is exactly why this is named the C3 pathway. 3 steps run in a loop: carboxylation, reduction, and regeneration. To make 1 glucose, you need 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 18 ATP, and 12 NADPH. Now let us go beyond 3. NAM and C4 plants, like maize, sugarcane, and sorghum, have a special leaf design called Kranz anatomy. Here, carbon dioxide is first caught by PEP, giving a 4-carbon acid called OOA. The C4 root pumps carbon dioxide into the bundle sheath, so Rubisco stays busy fixing carbon, which is why C4 plants are more productive. Photorespiration. In C3 plants, Rubisco can also bind oxygen, wasting grub with no sugar, no ATP, and no NADPH. ND, key 4 plants cleverly avoid it. And the limiting factors, by Blackman's law, the rate is set by whichever factor is in shortest supply, usually light, carbon dioxide, temperature, or water. Now the high yield pointers. The facts need turns into questions. 1. Chlorophyll A is the reaction center pigment, and the oxygen in photosynthesis comes from the splitting of water. 2. The light reaction is on the thylakoid, making ATP, NADPH, and oxygen. The dark reaction is in the stroma. 3. In C3, the first product is PGA, the acceptor is RUPA, the enzyme is Rubisco. In key 4, the first product is OOO, as and the acceptor is PEP. 4. Photorespiration happens in C3 plants only when Rubisco acts as an oxygenase, with no ATP, no NADPH, and no sugar. 5. Blackman's law of limiting factors. The factor nearest its minimum controls the overall rate. Now the first rule, assertion, and reason. Each time ask, is it true? Is R true? And does R explain A? First, the oxygen released in photosynthesis comes from water. R, water is split during the light reaction near photosystem 2. Both true, and R correctly explains A, so the answer is A. Second, C4 plants show photorespiration more than 3 plants. R की SLE com में concentrate carbon dioxide around Rubisco in the bundle sheet. Here A is false, but R is true, so the answer is D. Third, a Calvin cycle can run without light being directly present. R, it uses the ATP and NADPH made in the light reaction. Both true, and R explains A, so the answer is A. Now, the second drill, match the column. Make the correct pairs. Rubisco, it fixes carbon dioxide onto rub in the C3 cycle. PEP carboxylase, the first carbon dioxide fixation in C4 plants. Photolysis, the splitting of water, which releases oxygen. And the stroma, the site of the Calvin cycle. Now, the third drill. How many of these statements are correct? Test them one by one. First, the first stable product of the C3 cycle is PGA. This is correct. Second, the oxygen released in photosynthesis comes from carbon dioxide. This is wrong. It comes from water. Third, C4 plants have Kranz anatomy and avoid photorespiration. This is correct. So the correct statements are two. That is, the first and the third. Now let us clear the mistakes that students fall into. Myth: the oxygen given off comes from the carbon dioxide. Truth: the oxygen comes from the splitting of water in the light reaction. Myth: the dark reaction happens only at night, in the dark. Truth: it simply does not use light directly. It runs in daylight using the ATP and NADPH. Now, test yourself. Think of each answer before it appears. Answer before the reveal. That is how strong NEET recall is built. Question 1. The first stable product of the C cycle? Answer: the 3-carbon acid PGA. Question 2. The primary carbon dioxide acceptor in C4 plants? PEP. Question 3. Where does the light reaction occur? On the thylakoid membrane. Question 4. The source of the oxygen that is released? Water. Question 5. Which enzyme causes photorespiration? Rubisco. Let us gather it all in one breath. Chlorophyll A is the chief pigment. The accessory pigments feed it energy and shield it. The light reaction on the thylakoid makes ATP, NADPH, and oxygen from water. The Calvin cycle in the stroma fixes carbon dioxide. The C3 first product is PGA. E4 plants, Kranz anatomy, PEP as acceptor, O₂ as first product, and no photorespiration. Photorespiration wastes rub in 3 plants, and Blackman's law sets the rate by the scarcest factor. Next class, how plants release that stored energy, respiration. See you there. You now know how a leaf turns sunlight, water, and air into food. One idea at a time, with a calm mind, and you will surely crack NEET. This is Typical Monk. Every class, always free.